If you are of a particular age, you will remember that back in the day, if somebody asked you to show them a picture of your family, you would reach either in your pocket or somewhere around your neck, and you will take out a little locket and you will open it, and there hiding inside was a tiny little picture either of your loved one or of your loved ones. Do you know what I'm talking about? All right, that shows some of your age. But if you are of a different age and somebody were to ask you, please show me a picture of your family, you would reach into your pocket and you would pull out a wallet. And right there in your wallet, there was one or there were more than one pictures depending on the size of your wallet. And you will say, and you will start telling stories about your family. And then if you are of a different age and somebody were to ask you to show them a picture of a family, you will reach into your pocket and you will pull out and on the lock screen there will be a picture of a loved one or your family, and you open it, and then on the desktop there is another, and you shuffle over to the next stop, and then there is a new one, and you will start telling stories about your family. Times are changing like that. Today, I'm going to ask you to meditate, to reflect a little bit on a picture of God. We do not have pictures of God, so it's very, very difficult. There are very few descriptions even of God in the Bible. There are some people who caught some snippets of God. The prayer that was read, that was David blessing God for being awesome, being amazing. Expressed his gratitude towards God. Moses poked and prodded God until God said, okay, I'll give in. And even then, God was still camera shy because it didn't quite show him himself, but it spoke about who he really is. You have some descriptions of God in the prophets. You have some descriptions of God in the apocalyptic literature. You have Jesus, and that's the best possibly we can come to a picture of God. Now today we are going to concentrate on a psalm for two reasons. Number one, because I would like us to conclude that little bit of series we went through the book of Psalms. Remember, we talked about good psalms and some difficult psalms, and then we picked ourselves up and kind of came to the other end. Today is the end. All right, so that's the first reason. The second reason for which I would like us to read Psalm 139 is because we're beginning a new year. And I do not know of a better way to begin the new year than with God. And Psalm 139 gives us an amazing picture of God. So avail yourselves, please, of whatever translation you can lay your hands on. It will be on the screen as well, but it will be easy to follow if you can. Psalm 139. We'll begin with verse 1. You searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit, you know when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Oh, such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. The first side of God which David is considering today is God's ability to know everything. In biblical terms, in theological terms, that ability is called omniscience. Okay? God's unique, God's only, this ability is reserved to God to be able to know everything. And I like it because it's paralleled in verses 2 and 3. It extends to sitting down and lying down. Verse 2, it talks about sitting down. Verse 3 talks about lying down. Whenever the writer of the book of Psalms talks about lying down, he talks about rest. And he talks about peace. He talks about emotions. You are okay in God's company. Then it talks about, again in verses 2 and verse 3, they parallel each other. They talk about rising up and walking. So whether my emotional state is good, whether I am active in what I am doing, the rising and the walking, or whether I am thinking or speaking, that's my ability to reason and act on it. No matter what I do, I am known to God. In other words, I am the subject of God's attention. I am the apple of His eye. If you were to ask God to show you a picture of His family, He will open His locket or pull out His wallet or pull out His phone, and you will be right there and you'll say, let me tell you about them. Because God knows us intimately, every aspect of our life. Every single sentence in this psalm except 2, every one of them includes either the pronoun you or your, or it refers to God or the Lord. This is not a psalm that's written about a God up there. This is a psalm that's written about God right here. This God is close and is very personal to me. In actual fact, I like verse 5. You hem me in behind, you hem me in before, and your hand is over me. What does that tell you about God and you? God's knowledge is so complete. There is nothing you can say or think that God is not aware. That is how close you are to God and God is to you. Do you like this picture of God? I'm not done yet. The first aspect is omni. Now you got to work with me. I'll give you three omnis, and there will be some words that are letter coordinated intentionally for those of us who are OCD. Okay? So the first omni is omni. That's God's ability to know absolutely everything. The next omni is God's ability to be present everywhere. Okay? God has this unique, you will see it here. Where can I go from your spirit, David writes. Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you're there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. If I get a brand new idea, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me. Guess what? Even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. God has this God-unique ability to be everywhere. Don't ask because I can't explain. All right? This is a godly thing. And it has implications for us. First of all, we cannot hide from God. Death will not separate us from God. And I tell you what I mean. Here in this particular passage, in verse 8, it says, if I make my bed in Sheol, in some translations, or in hell, or in the depths, even there God is with us. We cannot escape God. Some have tried. Can you think of any biblical names? That's right. He tried. And he found out that there is no place he can run away from God. Death will never separate us. Normally, we're accustomed to thinking God is in heaven. You can't escape him there. But death, really? Even there, God is with us. Distance will never separate us from God. Here he talks about running away from God on wings of the dawn to the far side of the sea. Wherever physically you remove yourself, you are not going to outrun God. So stop trying. It does not pay off. And lastly, told you they're all coordinated. Darkness is not going to hide us from God. There are those of us who say, well, if I'm on my own, nobody knows. Really? If I switch off the light, nobody's going to know. Really? David says, our God is so committed to his relationship with us that he will never let go of you. Wherever you are, whatever you go through, he's there. Do you like God? Do you like God? I reckon he looks good in these pictures. First, he is omniscient. Then he is omnipresent. Now, those of you who are familiar with church language will know that there is a third omni that's coming up, and that is omnipotent. In other words, God is all-powerful. And the writer says, you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes, in verse 16, saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, there are numbered the grains of sand. When I awake, I'm still with you. The writer here says, I know in my own body I carry proof of the fact that God has power over everything. The mere fact that I exist right now indicates that God was at work before I was even born. In verse 16, it talks about every single day of my life. God knows about it. It is written in his book. Nothing happens to me that makes God wonder, wow, where did that come from? God is capable of being involved in every single part of my life. In actual fact, he's so actively involved that it leaves the writer baffling. He says, look, it's precious. It's too vast. I cannot count it. And that ought to give me confidence. Because I am here because God wanted me to be here. I'm no accident. I am not a chance. God chose and God was actively involved in this. I have confidence not only how I arrived here, but I have confidence that God is going to take me from here to the next place. I'm confident in that sense. I'm also comforted. Because no matter what happens to me, God is not only aware, God is present and God has the ability to do something about it. That gives me comfort. And I needed to stay with the C words. I wanted to say "oh," but that doesn't start with a C. So the closest I could come with it is consternation. But what I actually means is I'm in awe. I'm overwhelmed at the goodness and the power and the commitment that God has to me. It leaves me wondering. It's pretty much like when Roy was playing that beautiful piece of music. I could listen to the theme that came and went and came and went. That's like God weaving himself into my life in and out. No matter what the thrills are there, God remains constant and comes and goes. And sometimes I go high up there and sometimes I go low here on the left hand. But it does not matter because the theme remains the same. God is an omni-God, an all-powerful, an all-present, an all-knowing God. Do you like my picture of God? It's lovely, isn't it? You know, I wanted to entitle this sermon Psalm 139, Ambushing God. Because what comes next is an ambush. You heard people telling you that before you say something negative about somebody, you've got to say 5 positive things. The greedy ones settle for 3. So I get an email, Pastor, this was a lovely sermon. It was very inspiring. Thank you very much for your message. And then you wait for the word, but. All right? At least I prefer those emails to the ones that go straight to the bot, okay? But this is one of those psalms. It paints an amazing picture of God, and then comes the but. Okay? If only you, God, would slay the wicked. All right? Away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemy. Now, what do you do with that? This is the other picture of God that you hope you will never get to in your wallet. Because we do not like that picture of God. And yet, you go through a week like this one, for example, and you cannot but pray that. We buried one of our former pastors on Tuesday. Yesterday, we got word that his grandfather passed away. Pastor Sam Davis's father. Yesterday, we got word that our former General Conference president's wife, Pastor Jan Paulsen's wife, died. His daughter is here with us in the church. You get through a week like this. I had to write to my church board a number of times this week to pass bad news to them. And you know what? You get here and all those goodness that you say about God makes you wonder, really? Because this, what he prays right here, is all too often how we feel about the evil that comes at us. Now, I would like to say, again, 3 coordinated words. That first of all, it is part of our human experience to cry out. Because evil surrounds every single one of us. At every step on the way, we need to deal with a tragedy or a sadness. Whether it is in my life, in my family's life, in the church family life, or globally, you turn on the television, you turn on the computer, and you get message after message after message of more and more bad news. Evil will always be part of our lives. Whether it was David writing about his personal circumstances, this psalm, or whether it was the people of Israel writing this psalm after the exile, saying, God, you saved us, you rescued us, amazing God, and you bring us here and look at all the enemies, or whether it is the prayer that we as a church have, or we as individuals have, the reality is that evil is always going to be part of our lives, and the people of God have always cried out to God. And we, like David, a full picture of God will include crying for God to intervene. We call on God. We trust God for all the 3 omnis. But that does not mean that we just settle. We keep claiming and we keep asking God, please step in and do things right. Just as well that this is a divine judge and not a human judge. Because the reality is every so often somebody else prays this prayer about me. God intervene because the enemies are at the door. Just as well, this is an all-knowing and an all-present and an all-powerful God because He keeps working on me, so I shift from that side to the other. So I trust in the 3 omnis of God while we wait and call on God for intervention. And then we'll do well to put our hand up every now and again and confess to God. Actually, if God, you really were to search me, you know what you will find? A lot of hate. A lot of enemies. It may be wrong. But never once did God say hate. But we do put our hands up in a picture of God like this. Confessing that we are human, and those are human sentiments. This picture of God reminds me of the Lord Jesus. He was one who knew. He knew who He was. He knew the things of God. He was one who was present. He was present all the way to hell itself on that cross, because God can never give up on his children. And he was powerful, and every now and again that power leaked out of him and miracles took place. Just like in our lives, every now and again the power, God cannot contain himself. He's overwhelmed and he steps in. And it reminds me of Jesus on the cross when the enemies all surrounded him, and yet he said, God, intervene, but not my will, not when I wanted, not how I wanted, but yours. That's where we differ from him. Because very often we're on the other side. But this is our human experience. We endure grief and troubles and struggles. And when we do that, we call on God. I'm reminded of Eve, First Lady. What would it have been like to have experienced the omni of God, to have stood in the very presence of God, to be imbued with God, and not long after that, to witness a child killing another and having to bury that child? What would that have been like? It's our experience. Evil affects us all. Elizabeth has written a song a while back about experiencing evil and making some choices. So we'll invite her to come up here and sing about that. It will be sung in a language that's foreign to me, but the words will be there. Reflect on how evil impacts you and the choices you make then.